the concern is that this chief justice would be handpicked by the prime minister, and therefore would not be operating in integrity. And there is a fear, that's just the fears of the people. I'm not saying that that is the case, but this is a fear. They're saying that that job has to be advertised, and no one has, it hasn't been advertised, and no one has been interviewed, right? And so people are worried that if he becomes a chief justice and he was chosen by the and if it is true that he was chosen by the prime minister, will there really be any justice in the country? Why is there this thing that this gentleman, this allegation that this gentleman, Mr. Leslie Haynes, is now being promoted as chief justice? Did they do any advertising? Is it necessary? I want to hear your thoughts on that, Kimar.
Well, to be honest, we've seen what the alleged person has done to the national insurance scheme in Barbados. We've seen what he did as it relates to walking the tightrope that the government set. So I don't suspect that there will be much justice. In fact, I think that there will be a greater perversion of the law courts in Barbados, because you take a man who has just basically robbed the people of Barbados by handing over the national insurance scheme to the government, right? And he sat on brass stats with Caswell, said that it was a mistake and they didn't really mean to give all of that power over to the Ministry of Finance and essentially the Prime Minister. But they still didn't correct the mistake. So this job is a reward that will give him obviously immunity, right? He will become immune to prosecution in Barbados. So if we investigate and find out that there was wrongdoing while he was chairman of the NAS, he's not exonerated from being charged locally because he's now the Chief Justice of Barbados. So we need to ask ourselves, what skill does he have that renders him the best choice available in Barbados for Chief Justice right now? Or is this a political reward for doing the dirty work of the government as it relates to the destruction of the NAS and signing over those people, those workers, onto a statutory board and putting the Minister of Finance in full control of the people's money? Those are acts that should be investigated, and I could guarantee you, Marcia, the results of that investigation will show that there was wrongdoing as it relates to the national insurance scheme. But you know what the government is doing? The government is not putting him in a position to protect him. That if, say for example, the opposition comes to government, opposition meaning us, and we do an investigation, and we found that he did any type of financial thing that was improper, he can now be shielded from any charges based on the position that he's being given, right? So we need to look, and this needs to we need some deeper conversation here, because this cannot be none of those situations where the government, and Caswell could tell you here, whenever somebody's caught doing something wrong in the BLP, they're automatically rewarded with promotion. They're not fired, they're rewarded and put in a higher position, right? And there's countless examples out there where we could see people doing wrong things, blatant wrong things, and still being given higher promotions and rewards.
Well, I don't want to call names, Marcia, but I do have it on good information that the position should have been advertised. And I'm getting this information from a former minister of state who I would imagine would be well aware of the requirements as it relates to the Chief Justice. But what is even more concerning as well, Kimar, you will recall he also had oversight of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And We have just come through an election, second election, first one for a pandemic, in which over 5,000 Barbadians were denied the right to vote without any opposition being raised by him as the chairman of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Now, give you grant, at the same time, the Bahamas held their elections, and the Prime Minister of Bahamas made it possible and ensure that everyone who was quarantined in the Bahamas had an opportunity to vote. So it could be done. But clearly, and these are the areas, I made a note here speaking of the separation of powers. It's one of the things I like about the American system, the separation of powers, where Congress is separate from Senate, separate from the presidency, separate from the Supreme Court. And the president cannot put anybody in a position, in a judicially authoritative position. He can nominate, but then the Senate has to confirm that individual by a majority vote. And this is why I've been saying for several weeks now that these are aspects that I believe we need to implement in our new republic when we talk about by the people, for the people, of the people. I believe these positions should be before the Senate, who away from the prime minister. I don't believe that this power should lay in the hands of the prime minister. I really don't believe that, because what you have there is you do not have a separation of powers, and I am doubtful that he is going to be objective. I'm sorry. I know Leslie. He went to school with me. I've watched him on the bench. I've watched him in court. I've watched his attitudes, of which many people have commented, and I'm not sure that even by choice, by selection, that he's the ideal person for this position.
We're discussing here, Mr. Franklin, about this position of Chief Justice and the allegations that Leslie Haynes, who was at the NIS, that we're seeing some allegations online that he announced to his staff that he will be leaving and taking up the position as Chief Justice. And so many are asking the questions. Many questions are being asked. What about that post? Whether it was advertised, whether there were interviews, and they're concerned that it appears as though he was handpicked by the current prime minister. Have you heard anything of that sort, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I am not surprised. And even though the Prime Minister some time ago introduced legislation into Parliament that says judicial appointments should go before Judicial Appointments Committee, and that committee would recommend to the Prime Minister, all of that was just fluff, because the Constitution is supreme, and the
Mm-hmm.
Constitution provides a way for appointing judges.
Mm-hmm.
And how that is done, and according to the Constitution, not according to the Judicial Appointments Bill or anything else of that matter,
Mm-hmm.
how it
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to be done, and how is that the Prime Minister, after consultation with the Leader of the Opposition, will recommend to the President.
Mm-hmm.
Now here we go. There's no Leader of the Opposition, so in the same Constitution, it says that if there is no Leader of the Opposition, then anytime that the Prime Minister is supposed to consult with the opposition, the Prime Minister will do it by themselves. Okay? So the Prime
Mm-hmm.
Minister has the sole right under the Constitution to appoint judges. Because even though they put this bill in place, and I saw Abrams and all of the other things, they said the Prime Minister giving away some of her powers and all kind of stuff, when they had the first set of judges that appointed going through the interviewing process. And I don't know if it turned out a judge that they don't particularly fancy, because since then they don't have any others. But there's
Mm-hmm.
a judge called Shauna Griffith who has, but she has earned my respect. I don't know if she cares if I respect her or not. But I've seen her judgments, I've seen her decisions, and in most cases, sometimes I don't agree. Mind you, not that I don't agree with what the judgment says. It's just that I didn't like the decision because I wanted a different outcome. But you
Mm-hmm.
cannot fault her, right? For her and just recently we heard that she was recused, or she recused herself I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
really happened. So the prime minister ain't taking her chances on getting an independent judge. So she wants people who would be her minions. And Leslie Haynes is a minion of the Motley family. Only
Why do
nobody
you
who
say
would.
that? Why do you say that? Because before you even go into that, so you're saying that the prime minister has the right, based on the constitution, to choose
Based on the
this chief
constitution.
justice. Okay, so
Yes.
that she
But
doesn't have to. It doesn't
but
have to be advertised or anything of the sort.
there is a piece of legislation that says it should be advertised.
Mm-hmm.
And but that piece of legislation is not piece that can override the constitution. So even though
Uh
the
huh.
prime minister had that legislation put in place, it was just fluff. At first I thought it was a good thing. Only not to realize it because there are several judges who have been appointed since that legislation has been put in place, and they did
Mm-hmm.
not go through the judicial appointments committee. Because there are several. I think Wanda Blair, she didn't get interviewed and stuff. I think also Carly Graves, even though I think he's a good judge, he didn't go through the process either. He went through the process for Chief Justice some years ago when Pat Cheltenham um, um, became Chief Justice. There was a selection process, and Pat was interviewed. Pat,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Pat Cheltenham, Francis Bell, and Carly Graves. They were interviewed for the position, and Pat Cheltenham got it. So the Prime Minister set
Right.
a precedent, but the precedent might not bring the type of results that she wants. So
I got
then I
you.
think that so then I take the chances. No, the and I look,
Mm-hmm.
I keep telling you that I am afraid for Barbados because of this judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry for speaking personally, but I have a case before the court now with the COVID-19 directives. When I saw the written decision, mind you, the written decision came 13 months after they told us we were going to get it in 30 days. The decision was read to us, and then a written decision was supposed to come within 30 days because, according to what the judge said, there were a few typographical errors and she's going to fix them and get back to us. Then after 13 months, and I didn't see, I went to the nation. But then my lawyers got called and they eventually issued with the written decision. And I said to my lawyers, I might be losing it a little bit, but I do not recognize what is written here from what was read to us in court. I might be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to be satisfied that I am wrong. So I want the transcript because there's a young lady in the court. She's there doing this little typing thing, and she types every word. And it was also recorded on. So I'm saying, well, I want the transcript to satisfy because I've appealed. But in order for the appeal to go forward, I have to be informed by what by found in the court, or not. We can't proceed. So when the time came for the appeal, my lawyers went to the court and said, but we didn't get a transcript yet. The Court of Appeal ordered the government, but the registration department, to produce the transcript in time for the next hearing. I think we had about 6 months between then, and they came back.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get the transcript yet either. And the Court of Appeal ordered them again. So right now we have the Court of Appeal in Barbados being disrespected. Nobody in being hauled in contempt for the court disobeying the Court of Appeal. If I had done refused to carry an order of the Court of Appeal, I will go up. I will be in Dodge. So I that's going to tell you. So why could people refuse to obey the court and the court just say throw their hands in the air and saying, well, we ain't get it yet, so we can't do nothing. The court now is weak.
Mm-hmm.
It is weak, and their decisions are ignored. If the court give a
Right.
decision, when I used to work in the Attorney General chambers, when the court gave a decision, people used to work till the night. in order to keep that order. I have actually been in situations where I was the clerk, and we were there photocopying things well into the night to help to get this thing before the court. That is how people respected the court years ago. No, because the court order
Yeah.
was sitting on nobody's mind.
You were saying that there is this relationship between Mr. Haynes. You're alleging there's a relationship between Mr. Haynes and the Motleys. Can you define what that is? Why do you think that relationship is going to cause a lack of integrity in how he rules on cases?
No, it wouldn't cause a lack of integrity. That can never cause. But it can give the appearance that can
Okay.
happen. So once there's this appearance, you try not to have that appearance in our system. You try not to, because
Okay.
he and the Motleys have been very close for years, and he has, as a matter of fact, he worked in the Motleys chambers. I think when nobody else would take him into their chambers or whatever else I heard, he got to work with Motleys. He was the fellow who used to carry Motley's bag when Motley was a big lawyer. I think he's not big anymore. It's just that he's living on his reputation now. But he was the fellow carrying the bag, the little boy carrying Motley's bag. You know, I was just like that because you see you don't get white people walking about carrying black people's loads. So he has been doing lots of cases now since this government has come into place. He's been doing a lot of government work. Even the case again that I had against the government, he would work for the government. He's been chairman of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, chairman of National Insurance, and that is where he
Pause there. Pause there. When you said about the chairman, the Electoral and Boundary Commission, Dr. Ferdinand raised an important point about the people who could not vote, and we don't know if that allow also helped his friend. Help that family, help his friend with the results of the election. That's
well,
just a thought. I'm not saying
Es-
anything. I'm just a
especially
thought.
especially Marcia, when you consider in some constituencies a victory can be 20 votes, or victory can be 4 votes, or victory can be 150 votes. You have 5,000 people who didn't vote. So you can imagine 5,000
you,
people spread over 30 constituencies is in excess of 100 people. Am I right? 100 people per constituency. So we could have had a very different result had those 5,000 people been afforded the opportunity constitutionally demanded. They were denied their constitutional rights. And I didn't hear a single attorney in this country take it up.
the attorneys in this country don't go against the government easily because they will be blacklisted. They won't get government work, and a lot of them there's a cap in hand because there are too many of them, and they either get insurance work for when people get in car accidents and stuff and sell out the clients, or they get government work. So if you don't get one or the other, you got to go there and earn your keep, and a lot of them are not prepared to do that.
I wanted the people to recognize that it was the same Leslie Haynes that was the chairman when these 5,000 or so people did not vote in the election. Right? He was the one who would have made that kind of decision or part of that. So bear
Look,
that in mind.
I'll tell you why I don't like the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Because it is appointed by 2 politicians. The Prime Minister recommend the appointment. The President actually appoints, but the appointments of 3
On the
are recommended by the
recommendation.
Prime Minister, and 2 are recommended by the leader of the opposition. So you will, and they usually pick their people. I don't care what kind of high standing they have in the community.
Right.
They're usually BLP people if the BLP pick them, or DLP people if the DLP pick them.
But Caswell,
So
you can remember that Leslie Haynes represented the government in the case, a constitutional court challenge by Israel Waffet, who was the former Attorney General. Leslie Haynes represented the government.
he was suing the Electoral and Boundaries Commission as well. So he he shouldn't really represent the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, because being the chairman, you don't represent yourself. So that would have been strange, you know, because you're being sued, and they usually say the lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client, and I don't remember who represented who, but it wouldn't be normal or even sensible, especially when they got so many lawyers around the place. But I'm like, let me get back to what I was saying though, because so nothing that the parties in power wants, the party that recommends the majority of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, is denied them. So the Electoral and Boundaries Commission should be an independent commission. It is not. And as a result, you will get decisions like this. And people then, and I can tell you from my experience and because I have been around politics for a while, I know that chairmen consult with the ruling party on things that they should not consult about. But I will not go further than that, because I would have been in a confidential situation at that time. So I know. So it is nothing new. I will not call names. I will not. I can give names of chairmen who actually went outside of their remit and assisted the government.
Mm-hmm.
So I never like it, because the government, because 3 beats 2 every time, and when you have the government appointed 3, whatever the government wants, those 3 can vote for. The other 2 might vote against it, but they can lose. So the Electoral Boundaries Commission is a sham as well. It should be a commission appointed by the president, picked from non-politicians. But I doubt very much that you will ever see that, because the president might not be favoring the party in power. Leslie Haynes, as I said, he's chairman of several things in Barbados. And also now, I remember him on the march when the Barbados Labour Party was campaigning against when they were in opposition and campaign against Randall. They had marches. He was on the march.
You say?
He is a BLP yard fowl. He was on the BLP march. I know that fella out there that marching for the government can turn out and be the Chief Justice. I hope that they were just flying a kite to see how the people would respond before they do it, because politicians do that. They let something out to see how people react.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have some person so well, I can't say compromise, but have the appearance of compromise, that he should be Chief Justice of Barbados. If he wasn't so political, and I'll tell you, he went on the radio and denied something he said to Barbados today 3 months earlier. Remember when they called him when they had him on brass tacks? And he said that the thing was just a mistake. Earlier in the Barbados today, 3 months earlier, he was saying that this is what the government intends to do. They went and they terrorized the national insurance staff to get the decision that they want for the staff to come over, and pretending, and then too we call it Jordan pretending, the staff came over and be so happy as that. The staff were terrorized. Walter Maloney spoke to it recently. Walter isn't lying.
My issue really here is we need an investigation as to what
Yes.
happened under the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, and an investigation as to what happened with the National Insurance Scheme, right? I just want to quote a piece here. It says here, Chairman of the EBC, Leslie Haynes, has made it clear that the EBC, this is with the 5,000 people not voting, that the EBC will be bound by the law, until the law is amended. COVID-19 positive patients will not be allowed to vote. He then went on to say that the persons in quarantine and home isolation, according to the law, cannot vote. He went on to say that the commission, which is the EBC, has sought an opinion from its legal counsel and was satisfied with the advice given. Now, based off what we saw there, he's the legal counsel,
Mm.
right? But he's saying that they sought advice from the legal counsel, and that's what the legal counsel said. And he went on to say that the persons who were prevented from voting were solely prevented because the directive came in force under the Emergency Management Act,
Right.
which prohibits those persons from leaving isolation for any reason. Now, that is where the wickedness was at, and that the government had no real authority to pass that Emergency Management Act with the stringent directives that was in them. What the government did that was so dangerous under the Emergency Management Act was to vest all powers to run the country in that of the cabinet. The amendment then went on to say that all powers that cabinet now vest all such powers in the office of prime minister, which means that cabinet through the amendment handed over the full authority of the government of Barbados into the office of prime minister, and that the office of prime minister indeed was managing and running the country from verbal directives and not any constitution, right? So the government did not refer to the constitution even as it relates to managing the general election in Barbados, because
Mm-hmm.
how can you restrict the movement of people, sick or not? The constitution doesn't say even if you got AIDS, COVID, sickle cells, tuberculosis, dengue, it don't matter. As long as you
Mm-hmm.
are not a prisoner, right? You should be allowed to vote in Barbados. The government used this Emergency Management Act, and as I said, only one person had responsibility for the act, and that was the Prime Minister. So you had 29 others basically neutering themselves, tying their hands, tying their feet, tying their mouths, and giving over full
Mm-hmm.
authority over to the Prime Minister. And then the Prime Minister gave a directive that anybody who's in home isolation or testing positive cannot vote. That's what you call voter suppression. What he did, you classify that as domestic terrorism, where an individual could be appointed to a sovereign institution like the NAS. The NAS was the people's money, you know. That is a trust belonging to the people. The people pay directly into the NAS, right? And what he oversaw was a handing over of that institution from the people of Barbados into the hands of the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister.
And the Minister of Finance is the Prime Minister. Here we go again. And so the appearance, and I love the way Caswell said, the appearance of it. We're not comfortable with it because it appears, the appearance of it is that, could it be that Leslie Haynes, could it be, it's a question I'm asking. I'm asking a question. Could it be that the chairman of the Electoral Boundary and Commission, could it be that that chairman, that he was placed there to help and to ensure? Could it be that these people, the Reverend said, that they did not get a chance to vote, and did that impact on the outcome of the elections? Did we have justice in the elections? And this man who we are believing created an unjust act, we are now saying he is the Chief Justice.
There was a court case uh, brought against the government of Barbados by Philip Catlin, I believe,
Yes,
uh,
Philip Catlin.
trying to block the general election in Barbados. But he was overruled, right? And he was arguing that the election shouldn't be going ahead in the midst of a pandemic, and then the government borrowing people. That should never be, right? but he was thinking, and it still went through anyway. So it speaks to the courts again, where if we went to the courts are supposed to be independent, free
Mm-hmm.
from the influence of the executive. Um, Professor Ferdinand spoke about it, the separation of powers, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative bodies. We
That's right.
have a problem where the executive of this country, where the prime minister is reaching over into the judiciary of the country.
Mm.
We have been peddling influence to cause sitting magistrates and judges to make perverse decisions. Right? I said earlier on the show, when these judges and magistrates make perverse decisions, they're not scolded. They're actually rewarded with promotion. Right? And if you look underneath it, you always see that they have increased immunities free from charges.
Yeah.
Right? You always see that they have that. And in this particular situation, the chairman of the NAS actually robbed the people of Barbados. He actually robbed the workers, the workers at NAS who were what you call public servants. They're not public servants
Mm-hmm.
anymore. They work for the board. That is called high class robbery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he did that to the people of Barbados, robbing the NAS public servants. Now they work for an independent board and they no longer have the benefits that were guaranteed to them by the Constitution of Barbados being a civil servant, right? So he's not being rewarded for overseeing that transition and robbing the people of Barbados and robbing this country, taking the NAS out of the people's hands to give it over into the executive. And who controls the executive? One person.
I think something is dramatically wrong in our country, that a single individual, and it must be concerning to us, that a single individual in Barbados has so much power that they can appoint both, and as I've expressed it, the separation of powers. You can appoint the president, you can appoint the chief justice, and if we are dealing with this particular gentleman, we have seen him compromise. The question really, Marcy, is exactly what you're saying. How can we be assured, or really, Caswell, how can we be assured of justice? You speak about justice. You look at the Supreme Court of the United States, and you look at how the Supreme Court is compromised. Sorry, is established in terms of the United States. The president doesn't have control of the Supreme Court. That's why he's so weary of the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court can rule against the President of the United States. Can we get that happening here in Barbados? Sometimes people paint corruption or see corruption only in terms of dollars and cents. But what we're talking about here right now is corruption. It may not be in terms of money, but is in terms of people getting a fair hearing. It is in terms of people getting
Mm-hmm.
the rule of law fairly and objectively dispensed. How can we be assured of that? If that is not possible, then the system is corrupt. Because you have one level of
Yes.
justice for one set of people, which Caswell is referring to, and you have a different level of justice is for another group of people. And this is creating the problem even in the United States. You've
Mm-hmm.
seen the riots, you've seen the pushback from people who see one set of justice for Joe Biden's son, and you see a different set of justice for somebody at a lower level in society. And that's, people are very
Mm-hmm.
disgusted with that.
Yeah.
Right. Um, I just wanted to add some information here about the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. We were speaking about opposition. So, Verla de Pisa,
Mm-hmm.
in the statement that I'm reading here, called for the removal of the entire board of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And
Mm.
this was around January 2022. And the reason for that was because some of the electors, voters, were left off the list. And in a press statement prepared, the she said that she called on EBC Chairman Leslie Haynes and others of the commission to resign because it
Mm-hmm.
was gravely concerning and revelations from Mr. Haynes regarding the inability of some citizens to vote. And it was said that on election day in an interview with Loop News, Haynes apologized to members of the electorate who were omitted from the general polling day list because they were scheduled to work at the polls. And they were on there and they were on the special polling day list. I don't know if you know what special polling day, but
Mm.
that is for like police officers, members of the armed
Okay.
forces, people who were in the polling stations, stuff like that. So the persons who were on the special polling day list, it will say that due to unforeseen circumstances that they were unable to vote early and subsequently unable to vote at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he held firm that one name could not be on two lists and that the names were not removed and entered for general polling day over the weekend before elections. Right? And he said that, well, she said that Mr. Haynes, a QC, has found it necessary to issue a public apology courtesy of a local radio station to the
Mm-hmm.
members, to the number of election day workers who, by faulty administration of the Department of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, were denied the right to vote during the recent general election, and is already admission that the apologist is guilty of some wrongdoing. And it is in this regard that Mr. Haynes' action must be considered an act of the gravest concern.
Yep.
And whether Barbadians who have great doubt over the readiness of the EBC that is entrusted with the responsibility for administering the electoral process to efficiently conduct a snap election in the midst of a raging pandemic. She said that Haynes admitted his maladministration of the EBC, which affected the body of election workers, which must be
Mm-hmm.
viewed in the light of a far greater problem raised in respect of the fact that thousands of other qualified electors who were afflicted by the COVID were also disenfranchised from the same general election. Right? And Mr. Haynes came out and boldly pronounced that those persons who, I mean, we said this before, who had COVID will not be allowed to vote. And the EBC had therefore failed in its responsibility to put such arrangements in place to accommodate all registered voters and had unlawfully excluded thousands who fell victim to COVID through no fault of their own, because it was the government who actually let in the tourists in Barbados to walk all around this country without administering the law. So it was an unfair
Mm-hmm.
application where they locked down Barbadians, had us in the houses, but had the tourists coming in here, roaming all over the streets, passing on COVID to people. But she, just to wrap up quickly here, because I don't want to read everything. She said what Mr. Haynes did was an unlawful act. And since
Hmm.
Mr. Haynes is apologizing for the EBC's inefficiency in respect to this group of electors, the EBC must also take responsibility for the
Mm-hmm.
disenfranchisement of the thousands who were unable to vote through the
Boy, wow.
same inefficient process, which involved no accommodation for every registered elector to express his franchise right in general uh, election. So then she went on to call for the removal of the entire board, because the board was essentially compromised in its duty to administer a free and fair election.
The Barbados Labour Party administration, this one, has the criminals around them. They can get the criminals to come and do anything they want them to do. Because some of them, I understand that they're paying some of them not to commit crimes. Yeah, you hear a crime down? And they had all these
Mm-hmm.
meetings and so with the people when they were having all these shootings and stuff. They're actually paying those guys not to go out and shoot people.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting I don't know if I call it a stipend, a salary or what.
from government not to shoot people. And
Wow.
I suspect that when the money stopped, then they start
I'm
back shooting.
listening as well.
I challenge the government to deny it.
Sorry.
That they during COVID when a lot of people were unemployed and couldn't get any money and that kind of stuff, the prime minister made sure certain segments got money. Entertainers, they got more money than they ever got before in their lives. All kind of things went down. Right now, so that same philosophy, they go and buy off people. They buy off the criminals. They get the criminals to say, well, we ain't gonna shoot the people, but we ain't gonna do this, we ain't gonna do next. So to be a good boy, you get $8,000 monthly. Or at least that's the figure that I heard. They can tell me that I'm lying. It is not 8, it is 7. First of all, the prime minister can't appoint anybody. And she doesn't want Santia. A prime minister never puts a strong person to be their deputy because they don't want to be challenged. So from the time you
cut it out. That's why I
see,
didn't hear you properly.
no, except the prime minister does not put a strong person to be their deputy. From the time you see some person become a deputy prime minister in Barbados, it is that person is not likely to challenge, and the prime minister don't have a worry about them. They're not concerned about them. So she is not a high flyer. If she were one of the high flyers, she would not embarrass her recently here and put a lot of people who are junior to her and make them senior counsel. Remember Arthur Holder, who can barely speak? He is senior counsel. You know, you can see the people that prime minister does not favor. Gregory Nichols, he ain't got a little look in. Don't mind, he scares me all the time. And on behalf of the mayor, she doesn't like him. So she ain't make him senior counsel either. You look and see who she made senior counsel. Well, she gave Eddie Hinkson one, poor fella, but he's harmless and he's on his way out. But right now, if the government changes and you have the lawyers have to go back to court and stuff, Santiago sit down behind Arthur Holder, and I think so. It is not. She doesn't have the prime minister's favor as much as people think. Don't mind nigger mouth, mind the actions, and you will see that Santia is not highly favored. Kerry Simmons, again, not highly favored. Because if you're going to have a person who you want to succeed you, you don't have them on the island every couple of weeks. Because the Minister of Foreign Affairs is the person who has to be on the island. Maxine McLean was Minister of Foreign Affairs. Maxine McLean never aspired to be an MP. She was in the Senate. So she didn't have a constituency to service. So you make her, and you make her. And the first administration, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, a senator. You don't put them in the you don't put them outside because you gotta go and service the constituency. The people looking for you to come to constituency clinics, they can't for you because out in government business. That is gonna make you unpopular. So when you see the prime minister make him Minister of Foreign Affairs, I say, oh boy, goose cook.
The question is, who then? Who do you think is our favorite? Because
The
Kima
favorite
is
is
saying you
Mayor.
think,
The
yeah.
favorite is Mayor. She is not going anywhere. First of all, in order to become Secretary General of the United Nations, Russia has a veto. She troubled Putin. You think Putin can say, oh, I love you so much, Mayor, for telling me to give to Ukraine?
No, after he saw her walking a hole in Biden's hands, I
You
don't
know?
think
So,
so.
that is something that she started, hoping that people would distract people into this thing. She ain't going anywhere. She is not going anywhere. And she's making sure that she does not have any competition. So, and let me touch Kirk Humphrey. Kirk Humphrey didn't go to the Constitutional Review Committee on behalf of the Barbados Labour Party because of any favor he had with the Prime Minister. He went because the chairman of the Barbados Labour Party is the president of the Senate. And you can't have the president of the Senate out there going before the country because the president of the Senate should not appear to be political. If you
Really?
look at all the other presidents of the Senate and all the other speakers of the House, except Michael Carrington, all of them stayed away from party politics when they were speaker. The only reason Duguid became an MP, a candidate in Barbados, at the Barbados Party, because of me. He, when Arthur didn't want him, Mayor didn't want him. And when his name, when his nomination came up, stuff, I was on the council. I get on Dixie. I tell him, look, you mean to tell me he is only a big pockets? He because whenever the Barbados the party needed money to fix the roof, pay salaries, and they had money and stuff, they so-called Duguid. And then all of a sudden they want him as a candidate. I get on bad. So and then I move the motion seconded by Malcolm Gibbs State that the nomination go forward. There were 7 for, 6 against, and 14 abstentions. I turned to Reginald Friday, who was chairman, and I said, Chairman, 7 beat 6. I think you abstained. Because the rest were afraid of Arthur, and Arthur didn't want him. And I remember the first speech Duguid made in the House of Assembly. And I was standing next to Owen Arthur by the members' lounge. And Arthur said, I misjudged that boy, yeah? Because he thought he was a fool and he didn't want him around. And so Duguid, and I remember when they put that proposal, when they brought that motion, I was working for Mayor at the time. Mayor called me to her office and cursed me, and they cursed you back. And I think that was probably why she and I don't get along too well anymore, because I stood up to her. Because I told her, you can't tell me who to support at the Barbados Labour Party. You could tell me to do this job, but I don't work for you. I represent St. Thomas when they come here. And I had to make it in no uncertain terms. So none of these people, as a matter of fact, Duguid did not get a ministry initially. And he get vexed and start making noise because he had planned to leave. But Mayor called a snap election and she wanted somebody, and she begged him to hold on, and they didn't give him a ministry, and Duguid was angry. So she had to turn around and give something. So she made him a minister, and then subsequently senior minister. He is not there because of any popularity or any favor and stuff. He's better because he got the goods upon her.
Do not listen to what they say. Watch what they do. And in that context, I'm looking at 4 faces here that I know the Barbadian public will not accept as a prime minister in Barbados. Neither one of them. If that is going to be the case, I think they will lose all 30 seats.
But you remember, Kerry Simmons used to be a Dem. He came over. He was the guy who called Liz Thompson and the other fat women in the party the 1,000 pounds of blubber. They haven't forgiven him for that yet, you know. You forget?
No, sir.
The Barbados Labour Party people might smile in the face because he's now an MP, but they still have that against him. You remember the 1,000 pounds of blubber? I don't know if Kimar was old enough to remember that, but he was. And the thing is, he was but like me, he was a Dem. But he left the Dems in circumstances because where he ran to become General Secretary and lost to George Pilgrim. And he was so arrogant and pompous. He don't feel like George Pilgrim should be able to beat him. Who was George Pilgrim? You know, he thought he's somebody. And he left the Democratic Labour Party and came over to the BLP just because he couldn't stand to be beaten by George Pilgrim. But George Pilgrim had David Thompson's blessing. So that David Thompson's blessing worth hell of a lot more votes than Kerry Simmons could ever attract on his own. So George didn't need to be popular. My money, he was not unpopular in the Democratic Labour Party, and then he had Thompson's blessing, and he got angry and left. So nobody trusts him. You know, so you don't think. And let me tell you something. I was talking about Duguid. When I went, but I didn't. Duguid, when we weren't friends, we knew each other. We would say hi, that kind of stuff. But I stood up for him. And when he became an MP, I can show you my bookshelf now. In those days, each member of Parliament was given a set of the laws of Barbados. If I can turn my camera to my bookshelf, you will see a set of the laws of Barbados up there. Those were the ones that they gave to do get as the reward for getting me elected. Trust me on that. I know them well. But mind you, we are not
Yeah.
friends anymore because when he told Donville about his mother's part, I told him that he should resign. That he that kind of behavior for a person who is educated, he can find other words. And he didn't feel that his friend should tell him something like that. So it'd be a bit strange because whether my friend or not, and I believe that you're wrong and tell you. And I told him that a person like that should not be in the house. So he took offense.
If there's one individual in the Parliament of Barbados that I have a lot of respect for, it is Ralph Thorne,
That's
backbencher
right.
Ralph Thorne. Right?
That's right.
I have a high level of
I have a
admiration and
high level of
respect
respect for
for
him.
Ralph Thorne,
Yeah.
and I can't vouch for him totally, but I could definitely say that he's an individual that we missed out on having that type of intellectual substance in the cabinet of Barbados.
Yeah.
Because
And integrity.
when you could put people who like to call themselves Brani and Panani in the cabinet to make them attorney general, and you put people like Wilfred Abrams who would come and tell us that we were already drinking sewage water, so we could be okay. Pipes that have not received water for a year. Uh, he's telling them that their dry pipes may have a leak. All types of strange things. I don't think Ralph Tarn would do anything like that. So at least I could say at least one in the bunch that I could say, well, I give my hats off to Ralph Tarn.
You are quite right. Ralph Thorne is but the only body who has that intellectual
Acumen.
um, capacity to be the prime minister and that whole group of. So I'm talking about even including the current prime minister. But and I suspect that the prime minister knows that. That's why he is not shining, and are not allowed to shine because he will show her up. He has the ability.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope you don't see me next week. No one come and rub it in my face because, but it's the truth. Now I want to touch home in Barbados because just last week, nurses walk off the job at Winston Scott Polyclinic. Those were the nurses in Unity Workers Union. They called me and they were complaining. They have been complaining for years, but they said this is unbearable. We can't take them. So I tell them go outside and stay outside until they get there. Of course, other union rushed down there and pretended that there were the people involved, giving the impression and talking to the press. Nobody, I didn't even tell the press it in there, but I just hush my mouth. And now you see the Barbados Nursing Association, they're rushing to today's paper and they gave a whole set of things. But my concern is that the doctor who is in charge of that polyclinic, when we were meeting with the permanent secretary and poor fella, he seems to mean well, but he found himself in a situation where he has a lot of cleaning up to do. And she said that these conditions existed when she came in 2020. So I said to her a bit. So what did you do in those years? And because did you write the ministry and say, well, I cannot allow my staff to work under these conditions because you are not only responsible for the patients that come in there, you're also responsible for the staff. People, you had droppings from rodent droppings, you had termite droppings, you had water coming down the walls
Wow.
and coming through the walls and making mold. At one stage during at that place, when we were going down to the back, I said no, I'm not going down there. Don't they smell too bad? And they offered me a mask. I said, I'm not putting on that. I'm not going down there. I don't know what happened down. It smells like an old cave. And you have nurses working in those conditions. And some of the things that the people asking for, they're saying they didn't have any money to fix. But you had $3 million to put a monument to LGBT family down in Hero Square. Government priorities are all screwed up. You don't have the people are dressing wounds for people who have they have to go back to dressing clinic to get their wounds dressed, and you go into a room, no air conditioning, nothing, and nurses are sweating while they're dressing, and the people with the wounds are there stressed, and the room's so hot. And government can put an air conditioning unit inside the place. But
Mm.
you can go and spend $3 million on a bunch of nonsense down the road. What is this government seem to see? They like to put up monuments, and at the same time, nurses are getting sick. And one on her deathbed, who used to work at the polyclinic in St. Peter, Morris Bar, she told her colleagues, it is the conditions in this building that caused her illness, and don't let it kill them too, because she was dying. And that is how come we had the walkout down there, because when she told them that, they got scared and then they called me because they were afraid at that point because she died. So we have nurses dying, getting sick. But when you get sick, they refuse to pay you. They take it back of your
Mm-hmm.
salary. And the same Duguid, who was vying to be leader of the Barbados, of Prime Minister of Barbados, he said that that the sick buildings are all over the place and it's because of a lot of air conditioning and all kind of stuff going on. The government knows that their buildings are sick. But when the people get sick in those buildings, the government take away the money from them. When you need money most of all,
Mm-hmm.
when you need money most of all to pay your medical bills, the government refuses to pay you, even though the rules provide that you should be paid for up to a year's sick leave on full pay. The government refuses to follow its own rules, and we now having, like, for instance, in the prison, prisoners and prison officers are getting sick in that building because some parts of it then painted and the cement killing people breathing it in. And when prison officers get sick and can't work in it anymore, they take it out their salary when they are still entitled to be paid, because appointed public officers do not pay the component for national insurance contribution that would allow them to get sick leave, sick benefits.
I want to thank Kimar. Kimar helped me so well tonight with this show in putting it together. My computer crashed as well. I don't have a computer anymore officially. It crashed this evening. And Kimar went on, used his computer and helped me to put the show together. So thank you so much, and put up those beautiful pictures and help to push the show. Thank you. God bless you all and have a good night. Love you all. Bye
Good
bye.
night.
Bye bye.